Up first, we have Neil from Mrs. Elliott's class. And Neil is representing the India country. After Neil, we have Scarlett, also from Miss Elliott's class, representing the country of Mexico. Following Scarlett, we have Josephine from Mrs. Oliver's class, representing the Nigerian culture. Following Josephine, we have Eva from Mrs. Oliver's class, representing Romania. Next up, we have Adeline from Miss Bullfridge's class, representing Costa Rica. The Costa Rican folklorico women's attire consists on a long, colorful skirt with a shoulderless blouse that has sheer fabric around the chest. Next up, we have Ezzy from Miss Jackson's class, representing the Chinese culture. Ezzy is wearing the traditional Chinese clothes called hanfu. Next up, we have Ali from Mrs. Ansel's class, representing the Vietnam culture. Following, we have August from Miss Alleman's class, representing the country of Mexico. August is wearing a traditional Mexican folklorico dress from the state of Michoacan. Next up, we have Leah from Miss Alleman's class, representing Japan. Leah is wearing a kimono and kanzaki in her hair. Next up, we have Sophia, also from Mrs. Oliver's class, wearing an embroidered dress. They are worn from many regions of Mexico and Guatemala. Next up, we have Nandini from Mrs. Jackson's class. She is representing India, wearing traditional Indian dress, lehenga, that holds deep-rooted traditional and cultural significance in many parts of India. Next up, we have Pravdeep, also from Mrs. Jackson's class, representing the Punjabi culture, and she is wearing Punjabi Shahara suit. Next up, from Mrs. Ansel's class, we have Madeline, representing Mexico, wearing a women's garment that was worn long before the Spanish arrived on the American continent. Next up, we have Aaliyah from Mrs. Crouch's class, representing Afghanistan, wearing a traditional Afghan dress. Next up, we have Zoe from Mrs. Crouch's class, representing the Mexican-American culture, wearing a beautiful handmade dress from Puerto Vallarta. Following, we have Mia from Mrs. Box's class, representing India. Next up, we have Liam from Miss Singh's class, representing the country of Wales. And Liam is wearing a vest, cap, red neck scarf, and a yellow daffodil, elements of the traditional outfit children wear on St. David's Day in Wales. Next up, we have Emma from Miss Singh's class. And Emma is representing the Vietnam culture. Following Emma, we have Aaliyah from Miss Singh's class, representing the Philippines, wearing a Maria Clara, which is a traditional dress worn by Filipino women during the Spanish era. Following Aaliyah, we have Safan from Miss Carter's class, representing the Nigerian culture. Following Safan, we have Yannick from Miss Vance's class, also representing the Nigerian culture. Following Yannick, we have Carlos from Mrs. Vance's class, representing the country of Mexico, wearing traditional mariachi attire. Next up, we have Dawn from Mr. Millar's class, representing the Scottish culture. Dawn is wearing a silk made from Morrison family tartan. Following Dawn, we have Allery from Mr. Henkelman's class, representing the Philippine culture, wearing Maria Clara, which consists of 4 separate pieces: the barro, the saya, the panuelo, and the tapiz. Next up, we have Harsane, representing the Indian culture. Next up, we have a few folklorico dancers representing Mexico. First up, we have Raylyn. but not least, we have Mrs. Peterson.